Good morning. Welcome to our colleagues, friends, and the alumni community watching with us. Thank you so much for joining this virtual celebration. My name is Anne Lee Seshadri, and I'm the Public Affairs Officer at the U.S. Consulate in Chennai. We're all here to honor a very special person with the Faces of Exchange Award. There are only 80 awardees worldwide, 2 of whom are in India. These 80 individuals have been selected from among the thousands of people worldwide who have participated in an elite exchange program for leaders known as the International Leader Visitor Program. This program has been designed to strengthen America's engagement with countries around the world and cultivate lasting relationships with emerging leaders through short-term visits to the United States. This program is 80 years old this year, and we're going to hear more about it and about our awardee during today's celebration. Now, if this were a traditional award ceremony, we would all be together on a stage with a large audience. But unfortunately, that's not possible. So to keep up with the virtual times, we wanted a creative way to present the trophy from its home in Washington, D.C. to here in South India. Please enjoy this short video.
This is such an honor, thank you. I think this is a symbol of what our organization stands for: equitable growth, inclusive development, and social justice.
So the cat is out of the bag. Congratulations to our awardee, Dr. Vandana Gopikumar. Dr. Vandana, who traveled to the United States on an IVLP on NGO management in August 1998, is recognized for her work in the field of mental health. Dr. Gopikumar is the co-founder of the Banyan and the Banyan Academy, organizations that address mental health concerns among ultra-vulnerable groups in Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, and Kerala. The Banyan's goals of social inclusion and participation have led to the development of 2 national models of care that have been widely recognized and taken to scale. Dr. Vandana received the 2018 Penn Nursing Renfield Foundation Award for Global Women's Health and the 2017 World Health Organization Public Health Award. She was also a member of the first mental health policy group constituted by the Government of India. Dr. Gopikumar will be in conversation in a few minutes with our Consul General, Judith Raven. However, before we start that conversation, we have a few people who would like to congratulate Dr. Gopikumar, including a surprise guest. I would like to invite Mr. David Kennedy, Minister Counselor for Public Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Anne. And I'm truly honored to be here today to be part of this virtual celebration to mark both the 80th anniversary of the IVLP and to extend our warm and deep congratulations and appreciation to Dr. Vandana Gopikumar on this prestigious award, the Faces of Exchange. The U.S. mission in India has administered decades of exchange programs focusing on educational, cultural, and professional development, and generated one of the largest and most diverse alumni networks in the world, with thousands of up-and-coming and current opinion leaders whom we are so proud to count as alumni and to work with on an ongoing basis. Each year, the U.S. mission to India sends approximately 300 people on various short and long-term programs, professional, academic, and cultural programs, ranging from high school students to mid-career professionals, from 1 week to 2 years in length. Some of these are worldwide programs, others are regional programs, and others are specific to Mission India. Alumni of U.S. government exchange programs include entrepreneurs, political leaders, artists, activists, academics, and media persons at the forefront of their fields. The Indian exchange alumni community includes 2 former presidents and 5 prime ministers, including India's current Prime Minister Narendra Modi. All alumni become a part of the global community of exchange alumni, promoting mutual respect and cooperation. We have been working on many wonderful and meaningful exchange projects with some and other projects with many of our alumni over the years, and to build on their exchange experiences, network with fellow alumni, and participate in alumni-only competitions. Mission India also encourages exchange program alumni across India to initiate and implement micro-scale projects. Last year, we launched a micro grants program to help alumni do social impact projects in their communities. We have also launched a virtual alumni speaker series, which is being hosted through our social media platforms on a regular basis. Alumni of US government programs lead interactive conversations in these series on various topics of bilateral interest. On a personal level, I've been in this business for many years, reaching over 20 years. I won't count them in detail. And truly, one of the most rewarding parts and elements of our work, and I will say this in a truly sincere way, is the people we work with. And those are truly represented by the impressive alumni that we work with, such as Vandana. Engaging in person, the last 3 feet of our work, is so truly important to what we do as Americans in engaging with people around the world, and specifically in India, to build connections, to build bonds, to build mutual understanding is truly an important thing. Today, we're doing this virtually. I wish everybody the best, everybody all the best health for their families, for their loved ones, and for a much better new year in 2021. But I also want to extend again my true congratulations to Dr. Vandana Gopikumar on this remarkable achievement. Competition to be one of 80 faces of exchange was fierce, especially in a country as large as India, where we have nearly 16,000 exchange alumni. This award is a tribute to the important work that you, Vandana, do, and we're honored that we could play a small role in your remarkable achievements. Thank you so much. Thank you for everybody for joining us today and honoring Dr. Gopikumar. Over to you, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I now invite Dr. Lalita Balakrishnan to give a few remarks. Dr. Balakrishnan is the president of Exchanges Visitor Alumni Association for South India, as well as the principal of MOT Vaishnav College for Women in Chennai. Dr. Balakrishnan, thank you for your leadership of the alumni organization, and over to you.
A very good morning to all of you. And at the outset, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Vandana Gopikumar on this unique honor. In fact, to be an exchange alumni is an honor in itself. And to be chosen from among those people and given the coveted award is really overwhelming. So congratulations. As a president of the EVAA, I would like to say that any volunteering opportunity is a great boon to the society. And when we go on this exchange program, we are exposed to so much of the community initiatives that the US universities and the places which I was fortunate to visit, we had seen. So I would like to tell my fellow alumni that it's a good opportunity for all of us to come together, network, and carry forward the good work. You had been recognized and chosen to be an exchange visitor. And so when you come back, there is a lot of opportunity for the alumni to network, come together, and give back to society. Quoting my own MOP example, we have paired with another exchange alumni, Miss Kalpana of Kodur School. And we provide breakfast to 100 students on a daily basis under our AHAR scheme. This year, we are also helping them to have newer computers in their computer lab. So this way we have networked, and I'm sure by visiting the EVAA page on Facebook, following up on these programs which throw so much of light on what can be done, learning from the experiences of such awardees, I'm sure the alumni are going to have a great opportunity. As part of the new normal, these online sessions have come to stay, and this is going to provide my fellow alumni a lot of opportunities to come together as well. For the other people on the program, I would definitely like to say that learning from such inspiring people as Dr. Vandana is going to make a big change in the lives of people, not only in your own midst, but with those whom you come into contact with and the society at large. So please make use of these opportunities which are brought to you by the US Consulate. When they make such programs, I think it's a good idea to log into those programs and benefit from those. I really thank the CG and Ms. Ann Seshadri, the PAO, for giving us this opportunity to network and come together. I'm sure more people, the awareness spreads. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of learning for all of them as well. And like Mr. David Kennedy made a remark, hopefully 2021 will be a much better year. Till then, we really have to keep our fingers crossed, continue to stay safe from this pandemic, and hope for cheer and good wishes in the new year. A very happy new year to all of you. And I really hope the exchange visitors come together to make lives of so many people in the society better as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Balakrishnan. Thank you for that endorsement of our program, and it's great to hear about the projects that you're embarking on as an IVLP alum yourself. And now we have a surprise guest with us. He is a renowned journalist, a thought leader, and the former chairman and director of a private publishing company. Can you guess by that description who I'm talking about? We are so delighted to have Mr. N. Ram with us. Mr. Ram, welcome, and over to you for a few remarks.
Okay. Can you hear me? I was saying, I recall like yesterday, my visit to the Banyan Emergency and Recovery Center, which was hanging on precariously to its rented premises in a somewhat obscure middle-class neighborhood in Chennai. That was sometime after the founding of the center in 1993, soon after the founding, I believe. As a journalist, I'd been invited by two young women who came to my office, Vandana Gopikumar and Vaishnavi Jayakumar, to come and see for myself what the center was striving to do against formidable odds. I learned that neighbors had objected to, even made police complaints against a place like this in their vicinity. I was told there were all kinds of rumors about this house run by two girls not long out of college. What I witnessed was a house that was chock-a-block with women of various ages in various states of mental illness and despair, some of whom clearly needed life-saving protection, care, and healing. It was a vivid and moving scene of a human emergency, but what struck me was how calm and poised Vandana was. Nobody at that time could have predicted with any conviction that this little NGO would not only survive, but would stabilize itself, grow, diversify, and become the institution, and shall I say, the movement it is today. I believe several factors lie behind the success. Humanism, call it what you will, altruism, tremendous empathy with those who suffer from mental illness in its different forms, a strong sense of social justice. That, I think, was primary. Secondly, and to my surprise, Vandana and her team quickly brought in a science-based approach to the challenge. Research was vital, and founding the Banyan Academy of Leadership in Mental Health, or BAM, I think was crucial to this, to the success of this effort. And partnership with universities, the focus on research, support they were able to give from both get from both foundations and corporates, I think built a very strong research basis and science-based strength to the whole effort. Thirdly, I think the organizational model, led by professionals with strong scientific capabilities or professional capabilities, supported by a large number of volunteers. And the Banyan and Vandana as an individual has certainly had mentors, strong mentors. And I remember with great affection, a former Foreign Service officer, M.A. Velodi, who who gave tough love at a difficult time. For example, you'd say you have taken in too many people and so on. And it was a constant struggle to find a balance between accommodating all and managing with your capabilities. And I think another factor was the heartening support from foundations and other sources of purposeful philanthropy. And that I think has been crucial. And then trust. This is, I think, vital. Trust in the community and families. Instead of just pursuing an institutional approach, you try your best, work hard to return them, if possible, to the families. Some families were not willing or able to take them back, but otherwise build community links and build strong, effective links so that they could work together. And apart from other things, we know the skills training and so on. And finally, leadership, inspirational leadership, leadership that works with teams. So I think it would be fair to say that the sacrifices Vandana and her colleagues and her team have made, particularly in their younger days, have borne fruit. She has made a happy marriage with a strongly supporting partner and worked out what her role as the managing trustee of the Banyan is. From time to time, she has other ideas that she will withdraw from a hands-on role and so on, but I think she's been able to strike a balance, and this is an ongoing effort. So I think I'd like to congratulate her on this effort, on this award, on the Faces of Exchange Award. I would also like to congratulate the US Department of State on the 80th anniversary of the International Visitors Leadership Program, the IVLP. I think not all exchanges produce this kind of result. I myself involved in an organization which promotes exchanges among students in South Asian countries. I have a role of responsibility in this foundation. And I know that not every exchange works, but overall, exchanges are a very, very good thing. When xenophobia is about in several countries, Vandana symbolizes the value of the positive and long-term impact of people-to-people ties through exchanges and purposeful engagements. This does not guarantee success, as I implied, but it gives you a great and a privileged opportunity to carve out your own future. That is exactly what Vandana and the founding trustee Vaishnavi and others have done. I wish them all strength in the future. I'm myself part of one of the organizations that the Banyan has developed over the years, and I wish Vandana every happiness, and thank you for inviting me to make these few remarks. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, sir. It's great to hear from you, especially as you were there in the beginning of Dr. Gopikumar's journey, to hear about the challenges she's overcome and to hear about the power of exchanges. We're very proud of the IVLP program. I would say you heard David Kennedy talk about some of India's alums. Globally, the 80 Faces of Exchange includes people such as Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. It also includes Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of Great Britain. So Dr. Gopikumar, you are certainly in very good company, and we would like to hear from you. At this point, I would like to remind viewers to post questions in the comments section of the Facebook Live, and we'll try to respond to those shortly in the program. But first, we'd like to give an opportunity to hear from Dr. Gopikumar, to hear about her work, and to elicit that conversation, I would like to invite our esteemed Consul General, Judith Raven. Consul General Judith Raven joined post in September 2020, and thank you so much for being with us, Consul General. So over to you to converse with Dr. Gopikumar.
Thank you, Anne, and it's such a pleasure to be among the speakers and to be here today for this really not just symbolic but important occasion for everyone we're honoring, including the program itself. So before conversing with Dr. Vandana Gopikumar, I'll provide just a brief snapshot of this very prestigious International Visitor Leadership Program and what it means in India from the top. So this year, U.S. Consulate General Chennai is pleased to be part of the global 80th anniversary of the International Visitor Leadership Program, or as you've heard, the IVLP. And as the Department of State's flagship exchange program, in India alone, 3 former prime ministers are alumni of the IVLP. Indira Gandhi, whose program was on education in 1960, Atal Bihari Vajpayee on political science in 1960, and Morarji Desai, political science in 1961. And then 2 former presidents of India are also IVLP alumni. We have Pratibhu Patel, whose program was on political science in 1961, and K.R. Narayanan on political science in 1969. So back to you, Dr. Gopikumar. You're in very good company, as Anne mentioned. Congratulations on your selection. You are among only 80 IVLP alumni chosen worldwide, only 2 out of India who receive this award. And so now the Faces of Exchange is really presented in recognition of outstanding alumni and their work. And in your case, you have focused on addressing mental health challenges in India, which is a sensitive subject, and you've certainly given it the attention it deserves. So I'd like you to speak about, if you would, a bit more about your current work. I understand that the Banyan is recognized as one of the largest mental health service organizations in India. And as co-founder of the Banyan and the Banyan Academy of Leadership in Mental Health, do tell us about your journey.
Thanks, Judith. And thanks everybody else. Mr. Ram, that was such a fabulous surprise. All of this is truly overwhelming. So thanks to all of you. I think the one thing that the program did before I get to the Banyan is really to bring like-minded people together. And this is not just from India, from different parts of the world. And people who really were in pursuit of a common vision, whether that was social justice or inclusive development or equitable growth. And I think, as Mr. Ram pointed out, in today's day and age, this becomes extremely important to make sure that we are one world and one people. So having said that, and congratulating the US Consulate for enabling this process, your question, what does the Banyan do? Well, that's a really large question because we've spanned now 3 decades. I think a large part of it Mr. Ram already spoke about. So to just make it a little more interesting, maybe what I will do is bank on stories and just give you milestones or moments through the 3 decades that have made a difference to the lives of the people that we serve and in turn impacted policy. Does that work for you? Okay, so the start, obviously, I think that was extremely important when Vaishnavi and I came in contact with this woman who was affected with schizophrenia, very visibly homeless outside my former college, Women's Christian College, running from one end of the road to the other in the midst of a sea of humanity, but on the verge of perhaps being knocked off by a bus. Now, that was a sight that I think, in a sense, sowed the seed, because that woman could have been us, really. What perhaps differentiated her from us was the social class and the privilege that we were fortunate to have, which this woman unfortunately didn't have access to, and therefore was on the fringes. Right? So we were all excited and wanted to do something for her. And at that point, all that we could think of was to call the local government resources and other civil society organizations in collaboration with the principal, of course, who helped us. Unfortunately, focused care, while the government did respond and while organizations did try to do their best, focused care that didn't just limit itself to institutionalization, but moved beyond and focused on social mixing and focused on rehabilitation and focused on mainstream living and focused on a sense of agency and participation in social and economic life. Those aspects of care really were lacking. And therefore we said, hey, if we were to live our lives, we wouldn't want to be locked up in an institution all our lives. Neither would we want to be relegated to the margins of the periphery. We'd want to pursue dreams, and so would this other woman. So that sort of was the beginning and the sort of trigger point, following which, like Mr. Ram said, we moved into this little place. We faced a lot of difficulties. Many people who were cynical about our start, who didn't think it was important enough, who thought investing in education and several other areas. And of course, a lot of sectors need investment. So it's not competition between one and the other. But those who are truly the ultra vulnerable certainly need a lot more support for the world to be more equitable. So with this small start at the beginning, of course, we were naive and we were very young, right? So we thought there were about 30 to 50 people in the city of Chennai, and that we would do that and the problem would end and we would move on. But like Mr. Ram said, before we realized it, it was overcrowded. But the one thing that we did is we lived with the women that we worked for, because we wanted to understand both poverty and mental ill health firsthand. So we're not just talking about people with mental health issues, we're also talking about homelessness, and we're talking about women who, as you know, India doesn't fare really well in the gender equity index. So there aren't very many women who have access to education or to healthcare or who participate in the workforce. And therefore, to focus on this niche category and try and impact it in such a way that it would be a game changer and build, therefore, from that small start, a larger framework was where the first 10 years of our life, of the Banyan's life, focused. So we moved from the little place. We realized we needed to have a larger building. But in addition to the larger building, we knew we couldn't solve the problems of the world. And therefore, we realized that we needed several other partners and for the government to take firm action, and therefore for policy to be impacted. And that's when the science element came in. And so along with NIMHANS and several other partners, we studied the impact of our work and of our therapeutic processes, which I don't need to go into because it's essentially treatment which ranges from psychiatric care to psychotherapy to social needs care. So I'm not going to go into those details, to, of course, rehabilitation. But the results really were that the people who had wandered away and ended up homeless as a result of mental illness didn't really do so in every instance as a result of abandonment. And a quick story again. So when we thought we'd be stuck with a large number of people. What happened was, so this particular woman, Ram Kumari, and I keep narrating the story, I remember she came to us and she was begging for alms, and the police brought her into our service. And as she recovered, she said, hey, I want to go back to my village and meet my children, and I'm missing my husband. So take me back there. So when we had enough resources, we went all the way to Pratapgarh, which is part of the central belt of India. And when she got off the car, after we got off the train, she said, well, I don't recognize anything here. So we went to the police station and they said, hey, we don't have any missing persons complaint. And so she was obviously devastated, and we were disillusioned as well, and on the verge of giving up and crossing the railway track and planning to get in the car when we saw this man push his cycle. And then he looked at her and said, hey, aren't you Bela's mother? And we said, yes. And he said, oh my God, you've been missing for long, so come. And then we walked towards her house. And by then, because this was a village, all the villagers had gathered around us. And we saw this house that was decorated with fairy lights. And as we got closer, we saw her picture hanging on the veranda, on the balcony, with a garland, which means this is a common way in which you pay respect to a person who's passed on, right? So the whole family and the village had thought that she died because they knew that she was quote unquote possessed, and there wasn't a sufficient access to mental health service. And therefore they had accessed alternative treatment modalities and faith healing. And in the process, she'd wandered away. So she had actually stitched little clothes for her little children whom she was missing. But when she got there, she had tall, huge children come running and whom she just hugged. And it was just overwhelming. Those moments were truly special. And the fairy lights, because we returned on the same day that her daughter got married. So these are magical moments. But to come to the second phase of our life, that sort of threw light on what we needed to do next, which is to focus on ensuring that the district mental health program, which is the flagship program of India, which at that point covered only 93 of the 500 odd districts that we had then. Now we have 700 plus districts and we have 500 plus covered. So we've come a long way and the treatment gap has lessened. But the treatment gap continues to be high today. We have 150 million people with one or the other form of a mental health issue. We have 85%. The range is between, well, they say between 70 to, let's say, 87, 88% is the treatment gap that continues to exist. So we decided that what we ought to do is not service all homeless persons with mental health issues, but build a model that would comprehensively address all needs related to this vulnerable population and focus on end-to-end servicing. So there was the Emergency Care and Recovery Center, that was the hospital-based service. There was the rehabilitation service, so people going back home and accessing work and accessing social entitlements. So the poverty issue could be dealt with. And then for those who couldn't return home, there was another sort of model created called Home Again, where people could just sort of groups of 3 or 4 people would come together and live in regular neighborhoods. So social mixing really could be promoted and they didn't have to be stuck in institutions. So I think that's where we are today, where we have our key models, the Emergency Care and Recovery Service, which has serviced about 3,000 people, our community-based services, which have serviced over 1 million low-income households that focus not just on mental health care, but on social health, and therefore on employment, on access to basic amenities, and on really challenging structural barriers around caste, class, and gender, because we believe that those are the precipitating factors. And you can't talk mental health without talking about these underlying inequities, because those are stressors in most people's life. And in India, it is true that a large percentage lives on $2 or lesser. There's 37%, I think, on $1 or less, and almost double that number on $2 and lesser. And the correlation between poverty and mental ill health is, of course, obvious. And the third model is, well, you live with severe disabilities and you recover only up to a point, but that doesn't mean that you have to be tucked away. Focus on neurodiversity, focus on social mixing, and therefore there's Home Again. So we built these models, and now we have the government and various other players taking it to scale. So that's it in, condensed.
Thank you. So here's my follow-on question. You talked about pursuing dreams, in this case, for those you were helping. But of course, your participation in the IVLP program perhaps helped you also pursue your own dreams. Is there any story that you take away from that experience that really was a catalyst for you to apply what you learned and what you saw, what you observed in the United States, here in India? Over to you again.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I think there were 3 very important things or takeaways. The first was that as a result of the visit, I realized that the problem around homelessness and homeless persons with mental health issues in particular was as acute and severe in the United States as it is in India even today. So you have a large number of people tucked away in the United States in prisons, for example, right? These are people who are homeless and mentally ill. At that point, homelessness was a huge problem in many sort of states, including in New York. And we visited many of the organizations that worked in these spaces. So the commonality of the issue and the fact that regardless of whether you're a low, middle, or high income problem, the needs of the vulnerable or the extent of vulnerability or the extent of segregation of those with mental health issues remains a problem that the world has to sort of focus on. The second takeaway was the role that advocacy played among civil society organizations in the US. Now that was new to us, because at that point when I went, I was really young, right? And so the focus was do. So reach out to more people, serve more people. And obviously we were going to hit the ceiling at one point and not be able to proceed further. So I think to a large extent, the introduction of science, the need to impact policy, and the need to show and tell, to set up demonstrable models, emerge from the conversations with many civil society organizations and also some folks from the government as part of the program in the United States. So that was definitely a takeaway, and that advocacy is paid off now, because as you mentioned in the introduction, we did have a role to play in the mental health policy, and therefore could, taking a leaf from lesson from the visit there, feed into the policy and urge for focus on ultra vulnerable groups, and those would be homeless people or persons from indigenous backgrounds, or those living below the poverty line. And the third would be the formation of consortiums and networking linked to branding and positioning, right? Which would fall under the broad category of both mobilizing public and social action and also social marketing. So the intersection between the two is a definite takeaway from there. And you'd see that until 98, our personality was very different from the person, from both as individuals. Vaishnavi and I sort of transitioned to being different people at different parts of, like everybody else does, but the organization also transitioned from being a quiet, understated, not wanting to be in the forefront, shy. I still am extremely shy, but when you have to speak, when you have to advocate, when you have to network, and when you have to focus on branding and positioning, then you just got to do it. And the returns, despite the stress that you go through, or despite the changes, are immense, because you bring a whole group together, and group advocacy is far better in comparison to one or two or three change makers. Imagine a zillion change makers coming together.
And for those listening in on live stream, of course, 1998 is a key date, because that was the date of the exchange program. And I'm so happy, Dr. Gopikumar, that you found it transformational. I would say you mentioned vulnerable, you mentioned commonality, and I think right now in the extended COVID-19 pandemic, that would really apply to all of us. How has the pandemic affected your work and those you serve? Over to you.
Yeah, so it's been a tough time. It's been a rough couple of months. So in our inpatient care, we were at a point where 100 of us, that's my colleagues and many of our clients, who are all immunocompromised, were affected. But the good news is that thanks to collaborations with government agencies here, the corporation was very proactive, the Department of Health was very proactive, and thanks to university collaborations with UPenn, the School of Nursing, we had already prepared ourselves in advance to deal with this crisis, and therefore could respond by providing care on site. We didn't have to admit everybody. We knew the protocols. We've adhered to those protocols, not just regular public health, the COVID-related protocols, but also regular structures and processes that many of the services the Banyan has. So that was a tough period, but that was not as difficult as the isolation that several people with mental health issues faced, because living by yourself and being cut away, especially if you're in an institution, from various other forms of access that sort of stimulate you socially can certainly be not a very pleasant experience. So that was yet another challenge that we had to face. But the real challenge was not with the people who were in home again or in our centers. The real challenge was with our outpatients, who are the ultra poor. They were disconnected from transport and therefore couldn't access health facilities. Many health facilities were shut in the initial days. They didn't have access to information more often than not. Several of the homeless people, again, in the initial days, knew nothing about COVID, and access to food for them all of a sudden just completely stopped, because their social capital would be people on the streets and the religious trusts and organizations, and everything overnight, temples, churches, mosques, people, everything just shut. So they were just all alone. So to see people suffer the way they did without basic amenities and food, to see children of the women and men that we service be exposed to the financial insecurity, and also experience the spike in domestic violence, and actually be privy to that, because the father and mother were at home, as was the child. In fact, the WHO have commissioned us for a study that we're working on in terms of the impact of the pandemic here amongst our population. And these are key learnings, that they went without food, without basic amenities. In the family, they had to make a choice. The mother skips a meal, the child gets his or her food, until the relief measures kicked in. And with the relief measures, Kerala did very well, so they kicked in really fast. Tamil Nadu did fairly well, so they kicked in fast again. But since our clients are from different parts of the country, the other places that they went to, particularly the central belt where poverty is acute, they suffered the most without access to basic amenities, loss of jobs, domestic violence, mental health crisis as a result, because you lost hope, isn't it? And what is hope? Typically, I keep talking about it. Hope, really deconstructed, is the ability for you to set goals and know that you have the capability to pursue those goals. So that's essentially, in hope studies, hope deconstructed means that, hey, you dream, you're hopeful, and you have control, and therefore you can set goals. And because you can set goals, you also find means to get to those goals. But here, neither was there the option for a goal, nor the ability to pursue it. And so that collapse was devastating. And what is really sad, and I'll end with that, is that if you look at the 1918 Spanish flu or the Bombay influenza, right, you see similar kinds of people affected. So the least affected, so about 7 to 10% of those affected the most in significant ways, were non-Indians and Europeans. But the most affected, that 60%, were mixed groups belonging to low socioeconomic segments of society. So we're seeing a repeat 100 years later. So the question really is, what have we done as a society? What have we done as people to change this narrative? And I'm hoping that this time, with the concerted effort and with the focus and with the call to focus from the UN on the lives of the ultra vulnerable, that the situation 100 years later will be different.
Well, I will say, Dr. Gopikumar, if hope is a goal, you clearly have one and many, and it's an honor and it's an inspiration to hear about your achievements and the recognition you and the Banyan have received. You've addressed mental health and women's empowerment, and you provide and you continue to provide outstanding service to humanity and are clearly stepping up to the poignant need of the moment. I really look forward to meeting you in person when that's possible. And on behalf of all of those viewing and listening, I wish you the best and congratulate you on your well-deserved U.S. Department of State Faces of Exchange Award. Over to you, Anne, and back to you, Dr. Gopikumar. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Judith. It's been nothing but a pleasure. And yes, we very much look forward to welcoming you to the Banyan. And I'm sure that'll happen soon.
Thank you both very much for that enlightening conversation. I'd like to ask all of our guests to please turn on their videos so we can have a photo before closing remarks. And everyone please smile as a sign of our congratulations. Okay, Dr. Gopikumar, before we close, I wanted to give you the floor for any closing remarks about the journey that you've just talked about so eloquently. Over to you.
Well, I think I've said everything that I had to. The only thought that always stays with me is that I think we need to engage a little more with each other. And that's outside of our immediate social worlds. If we were to do that, I think what we see or the reality is really obvious. What we see, therefore, would stir us more and stir us more into action. So I feel if we could engage more with different social worlds, and if social mixing could promote that, then the world really would be a better place. And that's what all of us want, isn't it? You see a lot of that in Kerala. You see different groups mixing. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great advice for all of us. So congratulations once again. On behalf of the US mission to India, it's just an honor to be a small part of your success story. I want to thank the Consul General for her valuable time and presence. I want to thank David Kennedy for joining us from New Delhi. And I want to thank Dr. Balakrishnan and Mr. N. Ram for joining us today. Thanks to all of our alumni and contacts of the US Consulate listening and watching. And to all of you, stay safe and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.